Hello, this is Dave. So, Emperor Sadiq Khan has extended the ULEZ, the Ultra Low Emission Zone, to pretty much the whole of the M25, which means suddenly millions of people will be suddenly penalised just for living where they live. This is just another giant leap towards Agenda 2030, but it's a desperate one because usually they make small moves so that the muggles don't notice. But I think it's a sign that things aren't going the way they'd like them to go. This plan started a long time ago. For me, it became noticeable when I realised that the generation that came after me were being discouraged to drive. You know, driving tests became exceedingly difficult to pass and insurance became obscenely expensive. So that resulted in essentially a generation of adults who can't drive. And also the same generation has been relentlessly blasted with this climate change bullshit. A little research will tell you that the whole climate change agenda started with a guy called Aurelio Pesci from the Club of Rome. I think he was the founder of the Club of Rome. And then it was pushed forward in the 80s with Al Gore, another Club of Rome member. But it's all a lie. So this ultra low emission zone is really to get rid of petrol-driven cars and get everybody driving these dangerous electric cars. So they herd us all together in these smart megacities, and they're going to use the food shortages to drive people out in the countryside into these cities. But remember, they need us to go along with it. They can't make this happen unless we participate, unless we comply. Right? So we can't just accept this ultra low emission zone because it neatly leads into this idea of 15-minute cities and then into no access to anywhere else but the city. As Captain Jean-Luc Picard would say,
the line must be drawn here. This far, no farther.
So what do? Well, it's very simple, really. We just ignore this ultra-low emission zone. Ignore it totally. We have the right to travel anywhere we want, in any manner that we see fit, even though we might have, in our ignorance, waived that right to become something called a driver. We don't have to be a driver all the time. And neither Sadiq Khan or Transport for London own the public highway, nor can they infringe on your lawful right to travel. So I suggest you act like nothing has changed. If you want to go into London, go into London. Don't worry about this ULEZ fine that they might send you. There are ways of dealing with this. This is all a game, and if you treat this like a game, right, then just like any other game, it might be hard at first to get the hang of it, but once you got the hang of it, it becomes easy and even fun. So treat it like a game. The first thing you can do, if you get a letter from Transport for London, you can return it to sender within 72 hours. That's 3 days. So you've got 3 days to essentially cross out the name and address and write return to sender, or no contract, return to sender, or addressee not known, return to sender, because as it happens they will use your legal fiction name, which isn't you, so it's not addressed to you, so you don't have to open it. So addressee not known, a return to sender, or addressee deceased, because it's a dead legal fiction. So you're not lying. So you can just return it to sender, and essentially it hasn't been served upon you. If it returns to them within 72 hours, then it's not been served. They can't proceed. Anyone who saw my previous video you'd have seen the clean hands approach to dealing with utility bills. Well, it turns out there's a clean hands approach to dealing with these ULEZ charges. So once again, it comes back to the 3 or 4 letter process, starting with a notice of conditional acceptance. So before we start, we have to deal with the first act of joinder. As I said earlier, the letter is addressed to your legal fiction. So in my case, it'll be Mr. David Murphy. But that's not you. And what they're hoping to do is, what they're hoping you would do is open that letter and, assuming it's you, and respond accordingly. So, notice of conditional acceptance. Dear Sir or Madam, thank you for your unsigned penalty charge notice, dated date, which I possibly opened in error, as at first sight it appeared to be addressed to myself. I've noted the content of your notice and return it to you. So again, always return their paperwork, and if you can do it within 72 hours, even better. If you hold on to their paperwork, then you've accepted it, right? Because you're exercising rights over it by holding on to it. Right? You've accepted it. If you send it back to them, you haven't accepted it. I must admit that I do not understand the alleged contravention. Again, you're not consenting to it. However, I'd be happy to accept your offer of a penalty charge on condition that you provide substantive verification of a few points. So, point 1. Please provide material evidence, not hearsay or opinion, which proves beyond a reasonable doubt that your notice was addressed to and intended for myself, the living man, known as Dave of the Murphy family, and not the person named Mr. David Murphy. So that really there is to actually get them to essentially try and admit that this isn't for you. So they're going to have to do a lot of dancing around to avoid telling you the truth here. And you can basically end it right there if you wanted to, because they can't really get past this. But, we'll go on. The alleged contravention apparently took place at time, on date, at location. And whilst it's possible that I was travelling in my private car on that date and at that time, I'm not familiar with location, so I can neither confirm nor deny that either myself and or my private car were at that location on that date and at that time. Well, you're not lying here, because if I asked you, where were you 2 weeks ago on Thursday at 5:45 p.m, you wouldn't know, would you? And even if you have an idea where you were, how do you know that you were actually at that particular spot at 5:45 p.m. precisely? You don't know. If you say you were at home watching TV, how do you know at 5:45 you weren't in the loo or nipped out to walk the dog or whatever? You don't know. So you're not lying. You're basically saying, I don't know. So you're actually asking them to provide the evidence that you were actually there. So, point number 2. Please provide material evidence, not hearsay or opinion, which proves beyond a reasonable doubt that my private car was at location, at time, on date. So you're forcing them to prove their claim. So moving on. Having read the description of the alleged contravention, I'm unable to determine who it was who sustained any harm, injury or loss, or whether a breach of the peace has occurred. So right there, you're making sure that no crime occurred, because as I've said before, a crime requires an injured party who suffered harm, injury or loss at your hands. So you're basically just getting rid of this idea that there was a crime committed. So point 3, if it can be proved that my private car was at location at the time on the date, then please provide the name of the injured party and his or her sworn testimony detailing the nature of the tort being the injury. So if there was a crime committed, there has to be an injured party. We want the details and the testimony of that injured party. The photocopied images that you provided do bear a striking resemblance to my private car, but do you have any material evidence that they relate in any way to my private car? See, they don't actually have anything on you. They don't have any evidence whatsoever. They require you to confess. That's all they have. All they have is your confession. When it comes to speeding tickets, they have a section on the back where you have to actually inform on yourself. You know, if they can't get you to confess to the actual infraction, they get you to either fill that form in, or they'll charge you for not filling the form in. Yeah, so either way they can get you on something. Okay, if your ULEZ charge has something like that, we might be able to deal with that at the end. But the point is, they need you to confess. So the photographs that they'll show you aren't there because they have some bearing on the case. They don't, because a photograph is not evidence. A camera is not a witness. If a camera was a witness, then you could go to court and call the camera as a witness and cross-examine it. But obviously you can't. So a camera cannot be a witness. Witness has to be a flesh and blood man or woman that can testify against you and be available for cross-examination. So in the same vein, a photograph is not evidence because it's a photograph, right? There's people who can do wonders with Photoshop. Yeah, there are cars that get cloned. So, you know, somebody sees a car that's exactly the same as theirs. They copy down the number plate, get a number plate made up, and now they get you to pay their tax and MOT for them. That happens quite regularly. So how do you know that photograph isn't of a cloned car? You know, how do you know that photograph is of a car with a bit of bird shit on the number plate to make an F look like an E or a P look like an R? Yeah. How do we know that the number plate recognition system didn't glitch at that moment and didn't, you know, get some other car's details mixed up with yours? Any number of scenarios could be at play here. So a photograph isn't evidence. So really, they just want to coerce you into admitting that it was you. So in lieu of actual physical evidence, they actually need 2 or more witnesses. So point 4 is, please provide the sworn testimony of 2 or more witnesses who have first-hand knowledge of the matter. Obviously, if it's a camera, they don't have it. The company is a for-profit corporation. Company profile enclosed. So, you know, I suggest you take some time to go to Dun & Bradstreet or Companies House, or there's a couple of other websites, and look up Transport for London or whoever else is operating this ULEZ scheme, and just confirm that they're listed on these company profile sites. So yeah, take a screenshot and enclose it in the letter. So company is a for-profit company, and as such has as much authority over me as Burger King or any other private company actively trading for a profit. And therefore you are unable to place any demands upon me without my express consent. So point 5. Please provide a copy of the lawful 2-party contract between myself and the company, bearing my wet ink signature, obliging performance, or material evidence, not hearsay or opinion, which proves beyond a reasonable doubt that your company has the power to force me into contracting with you. Please provide the requested information with the accompanying documentation and proofs of claim in affidavit format. That is, that they write it in a format where they're actually swearing to tell the truth under penalty of perjury. Please provide the requested information with accompanying documentation and proofs of claim in affidavit format, sworn under oath or attestation under penalty of perjury and upon your full commercial liability, that the facts contained therein are true, correct, complete and not misleading within 7 days of the date of this letter. Otherwise it will be deemed a tacit agreement by your acquiescence that all parties, to mean you and your principal or other parties, abandon all demands upon me. I must also decline your offer to make a representation against your notice, as I have not been presented with any material evidence that myself and or my private car were involved in this offence. So unless and until I receive such evidence, I am not willing to waive my inalienable right to silence in order to provide consent or evidence for use in any subsequent prosecution, nor do I wish to enter into contract of your company. Now this is the same procedure that you'd use if you're dealing with a speeding ticket, where they have the form on the back to almost compel you to tell you who was a driver. At this point, you're actually asking if you're actually, there and involved in the offence, and they've got to come up with proof for that before you can actually say who was actually driving, because you don't know if you're there or not. So moving on. Any response from yourselves which does not provide the requested proofs of claim, especially item number 1, shall be returned to you, as the addressee is not known at this address, and shall incur a £350 processing fee, plus £100 research costs, and if applicable, a £200 response fee, plus £100 inconvenience surcharge. So if they continue to harass you without answering your questions, especially in question number 1, then you can charge them. It's basically unsolicited mail that's going to the wrong address and to the wrong addressee. So you can charge them for your time. Continuing on, please note, if you intend to proceed to court with this matter without providing the requested proofs of claim, then my costs for attending court are a one-off fee of £3,500 and a consultation fee of £550 per hour or part thereof, plus an inconvenience fee of £1,000, plus travel expenses, food and accommodation. I will also require that the man or woman making the claim against me and 2 or more witnesses with first-hand knowledge of the matter be present in court and available for cross-examination. Obviously, there are no witnesses, just a camera, and no man or woman is going to actually be making a claim against you. And they know it. If it's Transport for London who's making the claim, then Transport for London has to stand there. Somebody called Transport for London has to come along and testify against you. If it's Sadiq Khan has to stand there and testify against you. But he would have to have first-hand knowledge of the matter himself, which he doesn't have. So no, it won't go to court, and they know it. So that's it. It's a clean hands way of approaching it. You put the onus on them to prove that you were there. Okay. Send this off. This is the first letter of 3. If you're familiar with the 3-letter process, it's a follow-up with after the expiry date with a notice of default and opportunity to cure, and after that expiry date, then you follow up with a notice of default and a estoppel by acquiescence, which basically means that you've come to a default judgment, and that is court. That is the process of court. It is the pre-action protocol, essentially, of trying to resolve the matter before going to court. And if you do end up being summoned to court, then you can enter your pack into the court and ask for a summary judgment against them, because you've done your best to resolve the matter, and they've defaulted by not answering you. And the trick to dealing with their responses is to stay on target. They're going to pretend that you made some kind of representation and it was denied. Well, no, you're not making a representation. You're trying to get them to prove that you were there. But they're going to try and derail it and sort of say, oh, you tried to appeal or you made a representation. That way, if you don't rebut that, then, well, now it is a representation and they've denied it. But no, you stick to the fact that they haven't got any evidence that you were there. So that's the clean hands approach. If you want the actual template, and with any template, I don't say that you just take the template and paste in your name. Right? No, you read it fully, understand exactly what's going on in this template, and write your own. Write your own in your own words, because it's not a template. It's just a guide, and it's your understanding of what's going on. Yeah, so if you like the template, just drop me a line at dmurphy25@gmail.com with the word ULEZ in the subject line, and I'll send you the template. If you've ever had any inclination to be a rebel, well, now's the time. Because we're at war. This is World War III. You know, we were expecting nuclear bombs and armies and that, but no. World War III is against us. And right now, the enemy is winning. The enemy has murdered probably close to half the Earth's population. Granted, most of them don't know they're dead yet, but I'm pretty sure they are. So don't be fooled into thinking that, they won't push really hard to get the rest of their agenda in. Because that rest of the agenda is how to take care of the rest of us who didn't succumb to the jab. So all I can tell you is resist. The only thing they fear is us uniting together and standing up to them, because there's a very small number of them, and there's still a large number of us. So that's it. Have fun. Thanks for listening.